It's another Human First AI marketing podcast. This time, we're talking about the infallibility or infallibility of AI and digital acceleration with Chris Hood. Chris, welcome to the show. You can find Chris at chrishood.com. And he's a speaker. He's a founder, a strategist. He's worked at Google, Disney, Fox, Universal. Incredible background that I'm looking forward to diving into. But Chris, let's talk about the new book first, because I think it aligns perfectly with the Human First AI philosophy here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. All that kind of jazz. My book is called Infailable, and it's a look at the artificial ideology that is reshaping consumer behavior. And if we think about this, it's that there is this really strong belief in what AI can actually accomplish. Unfortunately, it is not aligned with its true capabilities. And so this often generates a hype or potential bandwagon effects where people are hopping on to enjoy or try to implement AI and slowly start to realize that it can't do everything that it's built to be able to do. And so, I wrote a whole book on not just how it's impacting consumer behavior, but how businesses can look at it and compare different types of artificial intelligences with human intelligences, and then where you can bridge that gap.
Yeah, it's one of the questions I wanted to do a deep dive with you, is because I think there's a lot of different types of AI. And that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. But you had some that I had never even heard of before. So I think I had the list over here from vision AI, effective AI. A lot of people talk about agentic or predictive analytics or, sentiment analysis and stuff like that. But what's one? I don't even swarm AI. That's the swarms of robots and drones and things?
Sort of. Well, not really, but the best way to think about swarm is actually like a swarm of bees. So bees are great examples because they're natural collaborators and they work together. And so an army of bees will go and make a hive, and they are workers, and there's queen bees, right? And swarm AI actually works in a very similar process. You could also look at it as like birds, right? That flock together. And so all of these entities are out doing individual types of things in order to generate the results that it needs collectively. That's what swarm AI does.
So if you had to kind of parse these out for us, and I don't want you to give away too much of the book here, but I'm guessing that some of these are further along than others. The conversational AI seems to be working just fine. Large language models are better writers than most humans at this point. Other things like, super intelligence and whatever we call AGI these days, not so much. We're not solving philosophical problems or getting outwitted by sentient beings yet. So how do you divide this up, and where are we as we sit at the beginning of 2025?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think that's also part of why we are confused about what AI can actually do. If we look at all of the media, we look at movies, we look at, we've learned about AI through war games and Terminator. And so our belief system is that, AI is going to take over the world, and we're going to become slaves a la Matrix. And, we're going to live obliviously in this virtual reality of artificial intelligence in some way. None of that probably is actually true. But the unfortunate thing is that because of marketing, we have these terms that have become overly misunderstood. A great example of this would be autonomous vehicles, or the word autonomy. And so if you go into LinkedIn right now and you start to do a search, or maybe you even search specifically for autonomous AI, and now they're putting it in with agents like autonomous AI agents. Here's the hard truth for all of the listeners. Autonomous doesn't exist. There is no such thing as autonomy in AI. It's a fictional made-up term specifically for marketing. And so when we believe, because everything we're reading online, that, hey, autonomy actually exists, because why else would anybody be promoting it? that becomes part of this kind of infallible belief system in what AI's capabilities are that we are also getting from like Terminator. Terminator, you've got robots, they're autonomous, they're coming after you. Or, even other movies like, again, The Matrix. The problem with that, again, is that if we start to dissect this and we start to actually ask the questions about what is real, what is not real, what is hype, what is the bandwagon that we're on, and we look at something like autonomy and AI, well, you have to start breaking down what the definition of it is. And the definition of autonomy is that it's basically self-governance or without user input. And so if we then go to, well, we have autonomous cars. Well, no, you have cars that have a system in place that has an illusion of autonomy, but it's not an actually autonomous car. And here's how you can prove that. If you are driving around in, say, you could drive in any car, whether it's a gas car or an electric car, and you are running out of gas or the battery of your car is starting to die out, the car is not deciding to change course on you and go to the gas station and pay for gas and fill itself up. It's going to ask you, hey, or notify you, hey, the battery's low. What would you like to do? And maybe you input, yeah, no, I have to get to the store real quick. We'll go to the gas station afterwards. We'll go recharge, at a later time. That's a user input. And because of that user input, it's not autonomous. And see, those basic types of understandings are completely lost due to the marketing hype that surrounds it.
Yeah, I think we see that on the marketing side of things a lot, right? Because we've had marketing automation and Zapier for years. Now, 5 or 10 years we've been doing if this then that stuff. And really even the magic of Alexa and Siri and all the others were really just elaborate if this then that statements. If we can program thousands and thousands of lines of code based on what you say, we can have it take an action, but there's no intelligence there. It's sort of just repeating back to us what we have. And that's what I think people are talking about. AI agents now are very similar types of things. If we give it a direct task and we show it how to accomplish things, it can do that again when we trigger it to do so. But it's not making judgments, thinking logically, operating on its own to improve or take the actions that we needed to do to get to the goals. Is that fair to say where we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are the arguments that I tend to get into with a lot of people. And there's a lot of people obviously out there that will hardly, or adamantly disagree with me. But, ChatGPT as an example, large language models as an example are really nothing more than a glorified search engine. You're asking for something and it's returning something, and it's returning something that has already been predefined. It's incapable of creating something brand new because its learning and training models are specifically on past information. And then, like
just
Alexa,
happens to be all of the information this time. So it's still a cool magic trick. It's just not intelligent. Yeah.
That's why I call it the autonomy illusion. There's an illusion that you're actually talking with someone. Here's a couple of good examples. You mentioned like Alexa or Google Home. Now there is AI in there. There's voice recognition. There's, there's audible, retelling of whatever the information is. But ultimately, it's still a search engine. You're still asking it a question and still responding. But I asked somebody, a little while ago, I said, after you ask Alexa or somebody for information and it provides you that information, do you say thank you back? And a lot of people do. I'll ask entire audiences this, and a lot of people will raise their hand. And the number one response is, yeah, I fear that the AI will take over and I want to be on their good side. Right. So this is an example of how our belief system and what it's capable of is all being generated by movies and media. But there is an illusion that I'm talking with a real person. There's no difference in ChatGPT. If you are using ChatGPT on a regular basis, I beg anybody to show me their chat logs where you're actually asking a question and you're saying something like, how would you respond to this? Well, it's a thing. It's,
Yeah.
it's an entity. It's not a you, but we believe that we are having a conversation, a natural conversation. And the large language models and the ability to formulate natural conversations are excelling and really good. And so it creates this illusion that I'm having a collaborative session with another coworker and talking about things, and that's part of the challenge for us, is to
Well,
distinguish between those differences.
yeah, and I want to move to the next step from here, because I think we could go really deep on this, especially you and I, because I think we nerd out in similar backgrounds. But the Terminator versus Iron Man analogy we use a lot. So if we're not going for this AI Terminator, operating independently, and we're thinking about AI to accelerate our humanity and trying to decide between human jobs and robot jobs, and I think really I love that you come from the customer experience level. I keep thinking about it from our employees and our company value, and as a marketer, my head goes, man, you got to decide what kind of business you want, right? I've been a podcaster and a broadcaster, and if you try to become what everybody else wants, you're not going to like yourself at the end of that, But if you decide what you want to be, and then you find the people in the world that want that, you're going to have a much happier life. But I love that you look at it kind of from the other way too, which is like, just because you can have an AI agent answer your, customer service line doesn't mean you should, doesn't
That's,
mean any of your customers want that to happen, right? How do
that's
you
right.
think about the customer experience in this world with AI?
No, you're absolutely right. There's a reason why Discover, which is growing in popularity, has a entire marketing campaign that you can talk to a real person. Right.
Yeah.
And the entire Super Bowl commercial around, you really sounds like you're a real person. And these bots are getting really advanced. They're basically making fun of other companies for doing it. And they're benefiting from that strategic approach. And so I've tried to simplify this in a very easy way to think about it. Unfortunately, right now, you've got a lot of people who are focused on AI. Like, well, AI is what everybody's doing. AI, a bandwagon, hype, ideology, which I talk about in my book. Um, they start with the AI. We have to use AI, fear of missing out. Like, we have to start here, and then we'll figure out how we're going to use it and how we're going to sell it. And I remember actually 3 years ago now, I was having a consultation session with somebody, and they told me how much they are investing in creating this artificial intelligence agent for their business and onboarding practices. And I said, why? And they said, well, it's going to make everything easier. And I said, but you don't even know if your customers want it or not. And they're like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. But that's the problem. And so I use this phrase often now to kind of explain it. You have to start with your customer first. So customer first, technology last. And there's often a lot of other things that happen in between your customer first and your technology last. There's like 4, 5, 6 other steps in there. And then after you've chosen your technology last, AI maybe. Like, maybe you need AI, but in most cases, you can solve the problems that your customers are asking for, that they have. And that's really the only reason you're in business, is to solve their problems. There are hundreds of technologies that you could implement that are going to do the exact same thing without ever actually needing AI. I had somebody on LinkedIn post something like, these were terms that we were throwing around 10 years ago. Like, every business is a technology business now. Now I'm starting to see, like, every business is an AI business. And if you're not, you're going to be left behind. And my response was, I've got 2 companies that have nothing to do with artificial intelligence, and I'm perfectly fine. Like, we don't use AI in the company. We don't need AI in the company. We're not selling AI in the company. So your statement is false, right?
Yeah.
But again, this is part of that hype that you have to recognize and research so that you understand, so that you don't fall for the trap.
I love that, and it takes me to the next part of the discussion I had when I was looking up about stuff to ask you. Again, we're talking with Chris Hood, chrishood.com. He is a strategist, a podcaster. You can check out the Chris Hood digital show wherever you're listening or watching to this would be a great start. But you have background in all kinds of businesses. We mentioned some of the really big names that you've worked for. And what I love about your strategy is that you were talking about digital acceleration versus transformation. And where you were kind of heading with that is I see this as a spectrum that some businesses should be digital businesses. They just work better that way. It's easier. Like the one that I hate that is still human is like banking. How come if I write you a check, it still takes 3 days for you to get the money? That's something that's easily digital. It could happen instantly. You should have the money 2 seconds from after I send it to you. But there's other things like, I don't know, taking your wife out on an anniversary dinner is not something you want to automate with an AI agent. You probably better show up for that, right? So I think there's a spectrum. Then there's a whole mess of stuff in the middle that we as business owners need to decide what our strategy is. And so I guess I'll just open up the question with what's the difference between transformation and acceleration as we make these strategic choices?
Yeah, as you were talking, there's like 3 or 4 things that popped in my head that I want to like touch on.
I'm great at really long questions too, so take it wherever you want to go.
So the basic question: digital transformation, digital acceleration. Digital transformation. There's probably also a lot of people. It's funny. I would say about 2 years ago, I was seeing everybody like digital transformation was still a big thing, and I was saying, well, digital transformation is dead. Like if you haven't gotten there, you're too late to the party. And thus, I wrote a book called Customer Transformation. But digital transformation is basically conceptually like what are the technologies that you have to update to support your customers. Your customers are coming to you. Your banking statement is a great example. I now expect that I can take a picture of my check and it gets deposited, and it should be deposited like the same day. Like that's our consumer expectation. No different if you went to the grocery store and they said, oh, we don't take debit cards. We only take cash. Your expectation is I'm pulling out my debit card and I'm going to pay for my groceries. And so the transformation process is to reach the point by which you are serving your consumers in the way that they expect you to be serving them. Digital acceleration is basically a process by saying, we don't necessarily know what's next, but we're going to try to get to that point that's next so that before they ask for this type of technology, we're already offering it. So, going back to like grocery store, it would be one thing to say like, we take debit cards, we do take cash, we also take Venmo now. Right. And then, you would think that somebody has probably already, there's plenty of people who say, do you take Apple Pay as an example? Do you take Samsung Pay? And those are all kind of expected, but not quite. Like not everybody is using Apple Pay as an example. But as we advance, we start to look at what's next, and we've got to kind of start to predict what are we going to offer because we believe that's the trend where we're heading. This still ultimately goes back to your consumer. Because if you know what your consumer wants and you know what they are asking for or what their predictions of the future are, then you can start to adapt to those things in real time. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait until 1,000 people are asking you, why can't I deposit my check on my phone? You already are offering that service. That's digital acceleration, kind of a prediction layer, but it's rooted in understanding who your customer base is.
Now, I love all of that, and I could, talk for another 10 minutes just on that of like making different decisions, like you said, between, transformation. I feel like is what you mentioned, where a company is building a huge AI and they're investing hundreds, thousands, or millions of dollars to transform their company and completely rewrite the way that they're doing business with their customers. To me, acceleration and what I've been encouraging people to do is think about, you can't do the 3 to 5 year plan anymore. It's really hard to make bets that big and get them right because right now nobody can skate to where the puck is going, as Wayne Gretzky, used to say. We don't know where it's going or where it's going to end up 3 to 5 years from now. So what we need to do is iterate faster. We need to get into a digital acceleration model where we can find out what they need or want and do our market analysis and sentiment analysis and try to figure out what we can do now, and then adjust when we get more information or when things settle a year, 3 years, 5 years from now, and really not think about blowing it all up and just switching to AI because that's the trend. But we do need to speed up our learning process about AI because I don't think it's going away. And we need to start thinking creatively about how we can apply it in our business as a strategy, not just as a new business starting over from scratch in a transformation. So here's a tough question for you. You worked, and I've had a bunch of these roles as well in my career, but you worked in the digital experiences of companies like Disney and Fox, and that means the X Factor and other big shows, and video game companies as well, which is kind of creating the digital or artificial experience out of stuff that was already happening live. So I think you're in a unique position to talk to us about what makes a good digital experience versus what needs to be a live experience, and what are the magic of the two so we can start making some of these decisions. I'm sure you've thought a ton about it, but do you have a favorite way of explaining or thinking about maybe what should be digitized and what shouldn't?
Yeah. If we were to overly simplify it, digital experiences tend to be more about engagement, access, right? And oftentimes convenience. It's not meant to be something that we're doing in real time. Even though there's plenty of examples of like most recently, like Netflix, simulcasting the Mike Tyson fight, several months ago, which also tended to fall apart. But
it was a disaster. But X Factor voting, we're all going to do it at the same time. But that's roughly really rare. Digital better stuff is like, hey, we don't all have to vote at the same time, so let's take 24 hours.
Exactly. And versus, live events that they're meant to be live. They're meant to be enjoyed in real time. And there's this really interesting kind of technology or disruption, I think it is probably the best word, that we've seen over the course of definitely the last 10 years. Movie theaters is a great example of this. So obviously, and it wasn't just COVID. This trend started well before COVID. COVID accelerated that process. But the amount of people who would actually go to the theater has, dramatically declined. The movie theater experience was a live social experience. You would go in, you would be with friends, you would all laugh at the same thing, you would all be shocked by whatever was on the screen. And that kind of social community experience of the theater, although it's still available in pockets, it's mostly been lost. And so then we go and we say, well, now I go and I sit down on my couch and maybe I have my family, but mostly I'm just watching movies by myself. The social nature of that experience has gone away. We've even seen companies like Amazon, Netflix have played with kind of shared viewing experiences. You're remote, I'm remote, but hey, let's, a long time ago, it used to be, okay, hey, let's watch the movie together, but we're, 1,000 miles away. Let's press play on the movie. Ready? 3, 2, 1, play. Okay, it's synced. Are you at the same place? Yeah, we're at the same place. Okay, now we can watch together. But companies have tried to improve that experience and none of them worked. And partly, again, because when you're trying to replicate a social experience, it requires that people are actually in the same room socializing and conversating. And even some of the reaction videos that are on YouTube that you can watch with movies, you usually have two people and they're reacting in real time. That's even after the fact. The main reason I watch some of those videos is so that when they get to a certain part of the movie, I can see what the reaction is. But if I could do that in real time, that's a much better, you can then go off to have dinner, or you can go have drinks, you can talk about the movie, you can share that experience. How many times have we said in our lives, oh, you had to be there, like it's a great story, but you had to be there. Like we have lost that because the we have to be there are part of those live experiences. The digital experiences is an after effect. Even viral videos, the reason they go viral is because they've been captured in a mechanism by which we can replay them and go back and have that viewing experience again and again. So if you distinguish these truly between social and non-social, that's part of what we are seeing in addition to how we market and how we engage with content when it is more personalized and socialized as a community. That is going to have a bigger impact than if it's purely digital or purely after market.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for me, and I think I've seen that in my career where live performances. You do a lot of public speaking as well, chrishood.com, and when you're out there, that's a lot different than an online recorded course, right? That going to a large conference, interacting with 1,000 people, having the breaks, and it can be stressful, it can be expensive, it can be a lot bigger investment than a $59 online course, but you're getting a lot of that magic of the social experience and the energy. And it seems to be easier to connect and change people's behavior and keep their attention, quite frankly, than in an online course where something can beep or an email can come in or your phone vibrates or flashes or lights up, and all of a sudden you're out of that moment that was going to be that magic moment.
And fill that experience in with anything. You go to a conference and the keynote speaker is actually a video recording and they're not actually there. Or you go to a concert and you pay $1,000 to go see, we'll say Taylor Swift. You go pay $1,000 to see Taylor Swift. You get there and it's not actually Taylor Swift. It's the virtual AI version of Taylor Swift performing. Like, do you feel gypped? Do you feel like you've lost out? Do you disconnect immediately from that? We've seen right now, there are a lot of companies that are exploring with having AI bots, agents, conduct interviews for new jobs. And you go, and what's your first instinct? You're like, this company doesn't care about me at all. I'm not interested in this. And so you have to kind of play those scenarios out. And when you do, in your spot, if you realize like, I just paid $1,000 to hear this guy speak, and all it is they're just pressing play and it's being recorded, a playback. Like, this is not worth it. I'm complaining.
Yeah, I think there are times when they are worth it though, which to me is so magical. I just heard that they're experimenting on some holographic technology with Jane Goodall, the famous environmentalist that worked with the gorillas and stuff. And she's in her 90s. She can't travel anymore, but she still wants to do her activism all around the world. Well, hey, if they can pipe in an AI, and not even an AI avatar, but an avatar for her that is her allowing to speak from her home where she's comfortable and she can still engage and they can ask her questions and she can respond, but she can't physically show up anymore. That's cool. I'll go to a conference and I'll see a holographic Jane Goodall talk about something, because it's one of the last few experiences we're going to get, of her to share knowledge like that. So I think intention matters a lot, and whether we're clear with our customers and in our marketing that this is AI and here's why we're doing it, and we're doing this to improve the experience, not just to save a buck and to ruin the experience. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, the truth of it, I think, is the key. You don't want to lose trust with your customers, and so by being real and authentic about what you are experiencing, I think is a big part of that. In the same context, Disney right now is playing around with an animatronic, Walt Disney, and they are using AI, his voice and mannerisms, and then also responses based on what they believe he would have said. So you'll be able to go to like Disneyland or into the park. You'd be able to go up to Walt Disney, ask Walt Disney a question, get a response in Walt Disney's voice as if he is responding. But we all know, right? Walt Disney is no longer with us. Disney, we know that it's not real. And it comes with some potential flaws. Like, would Walt Disney have actually said this? We don't know. But it gives you enough context so that, I know what to expect. I know what the experience is. I know what reality is. And maybe that is going to be a very risky proposition for Disney, but it's something that, at least consumers might be willing to partake in.
Yeah, and I think some things like that are fairly low risk in my mind. That if it doesn't work, you just stop doing it. And they're trying to add to the experience, not subtract from it, right? If they said, "Oh, we're going to take away all of our Imagineers and replace them with AI robots," that might be a little bit riskier than, "Hey, we're going to try and add something special." And they've done that for years, right? Create some magic that otherwise wouldn't exist. And if it doesn't work or it's creepy, then we'll stop doing it. Right?
Yeah.
That didn't stop them on several rides that were definitely creepy. But regardless, all right, we're getting sidetracked. Chris, the last question for you is a fun one. If you predict out, let's say, quite a ways, like 15, 30 years into the future, which sci-fi movie do you think has predicted our future the best? Would you say it's a utopian future like Star Trek, or is it more dystopian like one of the others that we mentioned earlier? Which one would you like it to be, and which one do you think is probably most likely?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if we can get more into the Star Trek universe, right? Because I think utopian in terms of like commerce never doesn't matter anymore. We've all got personal communication devices attached to us that is our personal AI assistant. We can beam up places. We can replicate food. Like there is something nice to believe in there. Unfortunately, at the same time, that means that humanity has to change its thinking, and part of that is what gets us to where I think we're heading right now, is that because we are unwilling or unable to change our thinking, and because of what impacts artificial intelligence is actually having on us. I am a teacher. I have done my own research in this, and I was really happy that Microsoft recently came out with a similar research report that basically backed up what I've been saying for like the last 3 years. Artificial intelligence is directly impacting our critical thinking skills. It is also impacting how we communicate with each other. We've become a society of basically cut and paste, and when we do that, we lose learning skills. And if we continue on this trajectory, we will basically end up in the world of Wall-E. So we'll keep it Disney themed.
Oh.
But in Wall-E, you basically fast forward and you find out that there's a ship floating in space with a bunch of overweight people who are just, being lazy because they don't know any better, and they're just do the things that they've been told to do. They're floating on little chairs, and they don't really have any thought process involved with them. That is where we're heading, unfortunately. If we continue to use artificial intelligence inappropriately and without self-awareness and loss of critical thinking, and we reduce our communication in the process, then that natural decline will be the result. That the only way we resolve that is to again change our human instincts of learning and and innovation. We've got to get there, and we've got to teach ethical uses of artificial intelligence and get people back in the classrooms to actually learn.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to decide what's worth the effort and putting it in. Just like we've realized that we used to have to do physical labor all day, and now we got to go to a gym and pretend to do physical labor to stay healthy. I think thinking is the same way. Studies have shown you're 10% dumber if your phone is in the room. It doesn't even have to be turned on. We're just outsourcing a large percentage of our brain to the device, and even more, like you said, with AI. So somewhere between Wall-E and Idiocracy is what I heard. But how can we help you, or how can you help us, Chris?
Yeah, no, I'm here to help anybody. So if you need some guidance on artificial intelligence, if you want to improve your customer experience, if you want to look at things slightly different ways, you can reach out to me. You've already given my website, chrishood.com, but feel free to reach out, get in touch with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and happy to support you.
Yeah, check out the new book, Infailable, and also the podcast. the Chris Hood Digital Show, wherever you're listening or watching to this. Avenue 9 is a marketing agency that can help you develop your AI marketing strategy or do high volume content marketing with the assistance of AI, but doing it in a human first and customer centric way so that we can like amplify your voice instead of replace it. So if that sounds interesting to you, go to avenue9.com. Have a good one, everybody.